My ding-a-ling. My ding-a-ling. That brand spanking new snazzy Zippo hoodie you just wore into 9 to noon?
It's not that. Yeah, okay. It's not that new, but okay.
Looks really good to go with the shorts.
Hey, thanks, buddy. That's a classic look for all sexy guys. Shorts and a hoodie.
I'm not a fashionista, so I'm the last one to comment on one's apparel or their style or lack thereof with what they wear. But I'm just wondering. Last Friday. Is that what you wore when you went to watch the St. Paul Saints take on, I believe, Iowa? Or somebody on Friday so you can watch Brock Stewart? I think.
My in-person scouting in Iowa. I don't go to Iowa for any reason whatsoever. Yeah. I'll tell you that right now. I used to make fun of Wisconsin.
Right.
As all Minnesotans are born to do. But now I got one living with me, so I can't make fun of Wisconsin anymore. So I've shifted all my jokes to Iowa, so I won't set it foot in Iowa. But yes.
But seriously speaking, do you ever venture to St. Paul for Saints games?
Yeah, once in a while.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it'd be kind of cool because it's like, I mean, some of the luminaries that they have coming through there, whether it was Royce Lewis or Byron Buxton, now Stewart, and so on.
Tonight's going to be half the team will be major leaguers.
Really?
Stewart, Paddock, Alcala, Gallo, Nick Gordon.
Wow.
I think I may be forgetting some. They're all on rehab assignments.
Nick Gordon, man. I keep forgetting about Nick Gordon.
Yeah, he's been out of the picture for like 4 months, had a broken leg, basically. But, it's, I mean, when I was a kid, my uncle had season tickets when it was at Midway, and it was, we saw Darryl Strawberry and Leon Durham and J.D. Drew and all those people. Wow. But now it's a completely different setup. I mean, first of all, CHS Field is great. Yeah. They do a really great job over there. It's a great environment and experience to go to games. But now, like you said, you can go there and you can see Brooks Lee if you want now. Like you can go over there tonight and watch the Twins' best prospect play. Or, like you said, Royce Lewis came through there. Everyone's coming through there, and it adds a dimension.
That's super cool.
To Saintsdom that is beyond just the fun at the ballpark. Because they've always been very good at that. Yeah. But now, when they were independent ball, it's like, okay, you might see a major leaguer or two. But now it's, half these guys are going to be with the Twins. I mean, for that matter, you look at the roster, most of them have been up and down with the Twins at various points this year, and then you get rehabbing guys. Like we said tonight, Brock Stewart's going to pitch probably tonight, which I'm sure you talked to Falvey about earlier. I'm assuming, but going to Saints games has been pretty great. And I know there was a lot of concern about when they made this partnership a few years ago. Well, how would it affect attendance for the Twins? Because won't people just say, "Well, I can go to the Saints; it's cheaper"? Yep. There's plenty of baseball fans to go around. I think
with the president of baseball operations, Derek Falvey, who started 9 to noon. You can podcast at KFAN.com 9 to noon on demand. I pulled something from a give and take you and Dan Hayes recently had about postseason roster construction. And we joke around a lot, but seriously, I thought that was a terrific story, specifically because I hadn't thought about it, but you made a really good point in that story where you're like, whether it's 10, 11 pitchers or whatever it is, to have one or two long relievers who are never going to get in unless you're getting buried or you're burying somebody. Right. As opposed to, is it Luplo? It's Luplo, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now Luplo hitting right-handed pitchers, would it be, or left-handed?
Lefties.
Yeah, lefties, thank you.
But he got dropped yesterday.
That's what I'm saying.
To make room for Michael Taylor's return.
Right, so therefore you have a specialist potentially on the bench. All right, so we got Luplo, and they're going to come in with a power lefty guy or whatever, and we have him in our back pocket, as opposed to wasting's too strong, but having a pitcher or pitchers who may never see the field because these games are so tightly contested. So fewer long relievers or long guys compared to specialists who play positions. I thought that was a great take.
I think, this isn't Twin specific. We'll see how they make their roster. But I think in general, especially for these short series, which are 3 games in 3 days, that's just like a normal regular season series.
Yeah.
You would never go into a normal regular season series and go, well, we need 9 relievers because what happens if the starter goes? Well, yeah, if the starter goes an inning, you're in bad shape anyway. You can figure it out. But
great point.
I do think whether it's a guy like Lublo who hits lefties or it's a guy like Andrew Stevenson who they've used as a pinch runner and a defensive replacement in the outfield there in September, those guys, you can at least be more like proactive in using them. If someone hits a double in the 9th inning, you can pinch run Andrew Stevenson and, change the game through his legs, really, in a way that, I don't want to be harsh, but like Josh Winder or a Brent Hedrick or somebody like that, Cole Sands as a long reliever, they don't really make an impact because the only time you would be comfortable using them in a playoff game, the game is already not in doubt. Like you said, one way or the other. You're winning by a lot or you're losing by a lot.
Yep.
And you do need coverage. I mean, if the starter gets knocked out after 2, you don't want to have to burn through your entire bullpen just to get through the 9 innings because you're going to have another game the next day. But having 1 or 2 long relief or low leverage guys is plenty usually, instead of, the 3 or 4 that you generally have during the regular season. So I think, during the regular season, they have 28-man rosters now because it's September. But for the first 5 months, 26-man roster, that's what it'll be when the playoffs start. They've almost every team, the Twins included, go with 13 pitchers and 13 position players on a 26-man roster for the grind of the 162-game season. But when you're playing 3 games in 3 days and you're using your 3 best starting pitchers who you can feel pretty confident are going to give you 5+ innings, I think that there's more value in having, like you said, specialists available to come off the bench, pinch runners, pinch hitters, defensive replacements, guys who have multi-position flexibility so that when you start making in-game moves, you still have coverage defensively. And I do think the Twins are going to lean that way. But, I might be, if I were in charge, I'd be a little bit even more extreme probably than they will be.
All right. So say it's Lopez, Gray, Lopez. Mm-hmm. That's going to be the exacta. The question is, in which order will we fill set exacta? After that, Joe Ryan, I would imagine prohibitively favored to be number 3, maybe not prohibitively, but forget that for a second. Would you designate or would you qualify the Twins as a 5-and-fly pitching staff in the first place? I mean, it's like I brought up with Falvey, postseason baseball, generally speaking, is 5-and-fly.
Yes.
So he's talking about Stewart and Alcala and Varland, and we know we got Duran at the end and Griffin Jackson, stuff like that. Well, it's certainly not the 5-and-fly, here comes Maeda, 5-and-fly, here comes Ober, during the course of the regular season, but that's kind of how they operate in the first place, right?
I mean, I know they have a rep for quick hooks, which I think started last season, but the Twins actually lead all of baseball in the most innings per start. I think they're tied for number 1. So they have the opposite of a quick hook. I know it's a quick hook compared to, 1975.
Box. Got it. Go ahead.
But to your point, and you're 100% right, once even teams that have elite level starting pitching, and I wouldn't put the Twins quite at that level, but they have very good starting pitching. And they've gotten more innings from their starters than any team in the league. But there's less motivation to try to squeeze an extra 3 outs out of a starter when they're at 85, 90 pitches in the playoffs because you have your full bullpen available and you can't afford, in the regular season, you're trying to get through 1,500 innings. You're trying to get through 6 months. And so you can't be taking guys out early and putting the weight on your bullpen. But in a 3-game series, the opposite is true, which is you can put the weight on your bullpen, and there's less value in trying to get more innings out of starters if you think that the first guy out of the pen is going to be more effective. And you just listed off a bunch of names that if they feel good about those guys, you get, Lopez or Sonny Gray or Joe Ryan through 5, maybe into the 6th. You'd love to get them through 6, and then you just start bringing your best guys out of the bullpen, one like a clown car, just one after another. And that rubs some people the wrong way, I'm sure. But that's really how you get in the playoffs. You get a lot of starts that are either 5 innings or 8 innings because they're either 5 innings where the starting pitcher did okay, but they don't want to risk letting him in the 3rd time through the lineup, so they remove him and start putting in the relievers. Or the starting pitcher is so good, you get some of these vintage Verlander, Kershaw starts or whatever, that they just go, all right, it's your game to win and lose. There isn't a lot of middle ground where the starter goes like 6 1/3, 6 2/3, because at that point you're going to want to be into the bullpen. And that's why I think the Twins bullpen, and we mentioned Stewart and Varland and Paddock and guys that are coming back, they need to get Jax back on track. They need Duran to be big, obviously. The bullpen's going to be huge because they're going to be wanting to use 3 or 4 different relievers in most playoff games, even if things go well for them.
Verlander, Verlander postseason immortality. Okay, he's with the Houston Astros. I don't know how much you get a chance to watch of him because you're covering the Twins or you're at the home games. But I mean, he's given up 15 earned runs this month, and last night it was 6, 3 earned runs allowed, but 8 hits, and he struck out 5 and he walked 1. And the reason I'm focusing on this is because the Astros very well could be the target at which to shoot in the American League, specifically with that postseason equity. So, like, I'm thinking Verlander's going to be huffing and puffing, getting that thing ready for the postseason. It's been the opposite. I mean, and I know he's nearing the end of his career, but
right.
like with Verlander, like what do you think of him at this stage of his career?
I mean, he's good. He's just not, big, bright, capitalized letter, flashing sign Justin Verlander like he used to be. And we saw the same thing with Scherzer this year, I think. Yeah. And now he's out for the playoffs, most likely with an injury. But, these guys are first ballot inner circle Hall of Fame guys who have huge postseason track records, and they're amazing. But you start to get 40, 41, 42. They got a lot of mileage on those arms. And you can make up for some of your loss of velocity and stuff with just smarts and experience and, command and all that, which a lot of veteran pitchers end up doing. So it kind of cancels it out. But, the idea of, would I bet against Justin Verlander in the playoffs? No, but I wouldn't be in a position where it's like 10 years ago you go, well, this is Verlander's game. Like, he's just going to beat so-and-so. Now he's just a good starting pitcher that has to be managed appropriately, I think. And if you look, Garrett Cole's probably going to win the Cy Young in the AL. He's not in the playoffs. If you actually look at the top starting pitchers who are going to be in the playoffs, and there's still a couple spots in doubt, Sonny Gray and Pablo Lopez match up with anybody at that point, really. And so even Joe Ryan as a number 3 starter is going to be, above average among number 3 starters in the American League this year. So it's a different scenario for the Twins. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're going to be favored or that I guarantee a victory or anything like that. But if you go back and look at the last 20 years of playoff losses and the people and the names that have been starting games for them, they didn't have a Sonny Gray, Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan 1, 2, 3 in any of those years.
Right. How closely do you follow Gibby? Gibby for the Orioles, 14-9 with a 4.98 earned run average. His strikeout to walk ratio is 2.8. Yeah. But every time I look at a box score, Gibby's 5 and fly, 6 and fly guy who's on the right side of a dub.
Yes, they score a lot of runs. That's why newer school analysis doesn't even care about win-loss record for individual starting pitchers. Mm-hmm. Wins and losses are what matter, but the idea that Kyle Gibson, like you said, has got an ERA near 5, he's 14-9. Well, that doesn't tell you much other than he started a lot of games and the Orioles score a lot of runs when he's on the mound. We've seen the opposite with Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray's going to end up with like 8 wins, and he might finish 2nd or 3rd for the AL Cy Young, and it's like, well, how can he do that with 8 wins? Well, nobody cares about the 8 wins. He's going to pitch 175 innings. The Twins barely scored any runs when he was on the mound. But yeah, I think that's the biggest question I have about the Orioles. And now they've the Rays have effectively caught them. Yep. So they might not even get the bye at this point. But even if they do get the bye, they have a really good young lineup that I think is going to be among the best in the American League for 5 or 10 years here. But they're going to be relying on guys like Kyle Gibson to start playoff games, and the Twins know how that ends up a lot of times. So it's an interesting situation for the Twins to be in. I think the American League as a whole is pretty wide open. You mentioned the Astros are the defending champs, but they certainly haven't played at the level they did last year for most of this season. Verlander isn't the guy he used to be necessarily. They've lost some hitters. I think the Orioles have looked great all year. The Rays looked great early and weren't so good in the middle and now look good again. But I don't think there's like you turn to the National League and it's like Braves and Dodgers seem to be on a collision course for the NLCS. Yep. I don't know that I feel that confident of 1 or 2 teams being above the rest of the pack in the American League. So it's an opportunity for the Twins to maybe make a run, but obviously the Twins have to get 1 playoff win and then one series before any of that can be a topic.
The topsy-turvy nature of your Texas Rangers, it's unbelievable. They lost 7 of 8, then they won 6 in a row, and now they've lost 4 in a row. And they had a dirty 4-2 put on them last night by the Red Sox, who came from behind to win. But then now you mentioned Scherzer. That's postseason dog right there, who, like you said, probably won't pitch. Montgomery, a lot of it's going to be new to him. Martin Perez. It's the point being, I'm kind of begging for the Rangers. What about you?
As the Twins matchup, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the Twins went 5-2 against them. I don't know how much predictive value is in that, but I think that would be a decent matchup for the Twins. I mean, I think the Twins still want to avoid the Astros. So yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think they all have good but not great bullpens. They all have, I think, good starting pitching but not great starting pitching. I think the Rangers, especially, their pitching. I mean, they were supposed to have DeGrom. He's out. They were supposed to have Scherzer. He's out. I think any of those matchups are not going to be super bad for the Twins, at least on paper. Because here's what happens in the playoffs, too, is, A, you got to get to the finish line healthy. And we've seen that with the Twins over and over and over the years. And we're seeing that with the Rangers. It does them no good to theoretically have Max Scherzer if he's not healthy at the end. And sometimes I think we have a tendency in baseball to go, well, why are the baseball playoffs so unpredictable? Why do 95-win teams lose to 85-win teams? First of all, the difference of 10 wins over 162 games is not that huge. It's not like an NFL team being a 15-win team versus an 8-win team or something. And then the version of the team that you put out there in the playoffs, well, fourth and fifth starters don't matter. Rotation depth doesn't matter. Your middle relievers and long relievers don't really matter. It's all about kind of frontline talent. And what that looks like for a team can be much different than their overall record during the course of 6 months, you know, where they're relying on depth. And I think the Twins, from a starting pitching standpoint, they have lineup options that have been very good in the second half after a abysmal first half. The bullpen, to me, is the biggest question. But if they have Brock Stewart back and he's pitching into Duran in the ninth inning, I think the Twins have better frontline talent than what they're going to end up with, like 85, 86 wins, something like that, than their win total would probably suggest.
Does, with team bullpen earned run average over the course of the entire season, does earned run average, does that do anything for you? Sort of.
The problem with the relievers on that is it doesn't count inherited runners. So in other words, if a reliever comes in with the bases loaded and they give up a double and all three runs score, those runs get tacked on to the pitcher in front of them, usually the starting pitcher, and they get a clean slate. But yeah, I mean... Yeah,
but our guy gave it up, and they emptied the bases, and it mostly was his fault.
Exactly. So, you know, you can look at ERA. You still want to look at strikeout rate, strikeout to walk ratio. There's a stat called win probability added that you can look at, which will dock a player for giving up runs for another player, like inherited runners, which I think is more representative. But I would say the Twins, just in general, have been a above average but not great bullpen this year. They've had some weak spots.
In this whip, we're badass.
Yeah. I mean, you look and it's like, you know, Duran has been, except for about a 2-week stretch a month ago, he's been phenomenal this year. I think Brock Stewart was great in the first half. They're hoping to get that back after one more rehab outing tonight. So I don't know. I mean,
I'd forgotten how good Stewart was. Then I went back after Falvey said something about it. And it was like a .70, and I'm like, that's cool, man. Like, what, 6 innings? Like, no, it's like 25 games.
25 innings, something like that. Yeah.
25 innings, damn.
And I mean, just from a stuff standpoint, he had basically gone from not even being on the opening day roster. He was a minor league signing a year ago because he was coming off elbow surgery, to basically being the top setup man in the entire bullpen. He was, at the point he got hurt, which is like late June, I want to say, he was ahead of Jax. He was ahead of Pagan. He was ahead of Thielbar, even a bunch of other guys. He was pitching a lot of 8th inning or 7th and 8th inning in front of Duran. So that is a huge addition if he's healthy, if he can maintain velocity, if he's someone they could pitch, let's say, in game 1 and game 3 of a playoff series. That would be a huge boost. I think of all the guys that they have working through injuries right now, and that includes Buxton, I think I would say Brock Stewart is the biggest game changer that they could add, which is remarkable because, like I said, he wasn't even on the opening day roster.
I can't name a player in the Tampa Bay Rays bullpen.
That's how they like it. That's what they do every year.
Oh my heavens!
No one ever knows who they are, and they always, make the playoffs.
So I'm like, you're talking. I'm like, all right, let's just find some casual stuff between Toronto, Texas, and Seattle with year-long bullpen stats. And I mean, like, Tampa Bay is first through third in every important thing.
Every year.
Yeah, like the inherited bit that you mentioned.
Yeah.
They strikeouts, the Giants bullpen is 653. Tampa Bay has 599. But
no, they're amazing at it. I mean,
like with whip, they're number one with a bullet, 1.17. Good Lord.
They never spend money on. Right. I mean, they don't spend money on anything, but they never spend money, especially on relievers, and they just sort of cycle through these minor leaguers and waiver wire pickups and minor trades and scrap heap guys. And at the end of the year, they always have a top 3 bullpen, and then they get to the playoffs and they remove. By the way, if you hate quick hooks, don't watch a Rays game because they're taking dudes out in the 3rd inning, even when they're effective.
Yeah.
And they just, one after another, they just bring guys out. They all got weird arm angles. Some of them throw 88 miles an hour. Some of them throw 98 miles an hour. And then you look at the end of the year, like you said, and they're, 2nd in ERA or something like that. And the bullpens, what makes baseball playoffs so crazy and fun, but also hard to predict, is the outsized importance that like the top 3 to 5 relievers in every bullpen take on, because in the regular season, 65, 70 innings is a pretty big workload for a reliever over 162 games. Mm-hmm. In the playoffs, you'd have, the equivalent of throwing 100 innings probably over per 162 games if you're a reliever, because you just, you press them to go back to back. There are more off days and all that. So relief becomes a very big priority, but relief is also the toughest thing to predict.
This Tampa Bay piece that you've brought up, it's unbelievable. It's fascinating, some things they do there if you really take a second to just get below the surface. And I want to bring something up to you, plus some more on the Twins with the techie Aaron Gleeman, at Aaron Gleeman via Twitter. He writes about the Twins in baseball at The Athletic and theathletic.com.
EA on the Fan.
Erotic City. One of my purple friends is Aaron Gleeman. Aaron Gleeman at Aaron Gleeman via Twitter. Is AaronGleeman.com still a thing?
I don't know. Might have been taken over by the bots at this point. I don't know. I think I still pay like $80 a year to just keep it afloat, maybe to somewhere. But
are the bots like?
I don't know.
When I get a tweet from Juanita with 18 numbers behind
it's
her
like,
name,
are you ready to play?
Yeah,
it's like,
so
there's a lot of those.
They don't really like us.
It's still up. I mean, they don't not. Aaron Gleeman, what does it say? Like, go somewhere else to read my stuff, basically?
Yeah, you go to AaronGleeman.com. It's got the GeoCities quality banner at the top.
That's right.
Then it says where you're writing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Big 50, Men and Moments that made the Minnesota Twins.
Wait.
So I can buy the book.
What about EIC? Yeah, Editor-in-Chief.
Yeah, might still say
Baseball Prospectus. Is that in the dynamic lead?
No, that was changed. So,
all right. So within the last 4 or 5 years,
you've forgotten your roots. Yeah, there's no CV on here or anything.
Right.
Just current ways to contact.
Yeah, if anybody wants to buy AaronGleeman.com and turn it into, who knows, hardcore pornography, whatever you want to turn it into, I'm open to offers on it.
All right, so this is under the assumption.
Uh-oh.
Jason Adam got put on the 15-day DL, or the injured list.
Yeah.
Yeah, but only a couple of weeks ago. I think this is still in play.
This is big for you. Uh-oh.
This is unbelievable. The Rays are just, okay, hey, what's happening with this interleague game between Tampa Bay and San Diego? The Rays used so-and-so for 1 inning and then pulled him and then another guy for an inning, and here comes starter guy to go 5. Okay, what's that? Oh, that's the opener. All right, well, they were first and foremost with that.
Yep.
So now, why wouldn't they have 2 closers? Jason Adam and Peter Fairbanks.
Yeah.
I mean, Adam 54 innings, Fairbanks 43. They got so.
I mean, that's the thing. They don't really even care about
good Lord
saves,
with this team,
for instance.
Yeah,
they play the same matchups in the 9th inning that they would in the 6th, 7th, and 8th inning, which is if there are some lefties coming up, we bring in our lefty reliever. If there are righties coming up, we bring in our right. So it ends up looking like a co-closer, which I guess in theory it is, but. Even the Twins, who I think a few years ago had kind of a co-closer situation with Rogers and Romo, now it's basically just Duran in the 9th inning, and they try to get the ball to Duran. But yeah, the Rays are definitely, they do things differently. And by the way, Rocco Baldelli was hired from the Rays.
Yeah.
So a lot of the platooning and the so-called quick hooks and all that stuff, those are Rays things that he learned. He was a player for the Rays. He was a scout for the Rays. He was in their front office, and then he was on the coaching staff for a long time.
Well, I've gone down a rabbit hole
Yeah.
Good Lord. I don't even know what I'm looking at
Speaking
now.
of hardcore pornography, you start looking at those Rays relief statistics, and I can see you're fired up.
Right. And you know who's stimulating me?
I don't know. Who?
Colin Poche.
Yeah, okay.
Or Colin Poach.
Yeah.
Is it Poche?
I don't want to get involved in this anymore.
By the way, I think the Rays finally closed on a stadium deal. That the flop at the Trop may actually be dynamited at some point soon.
But it's going to be in the same place.
Yeah. Do they now have two bridges to get you from Tampa to St. Pete?
It's still in St. Pete, yeah.
When I've been in Florida for...
ROS Composite? What the hell is that? I'm sorry, go ahead.
What are you on, Baseball Reference?
No, RotoChamp.
Oh, rest of season. It's a projection.
Thank you. Continue,
But
please.
yeah, the Rays, whenever I'm in Florida and they play...
got a stat called Steamer.
Yeah, that's a projection system. It's like for fantasy baseball, I think.
I haven't. Okay, continue.
But they've complained so much about access to their ballpark, and it's a crappy ballpark, obviously, but no one goes no matter how good the Rays are year after year. Mm-hmm. And they finally get a stadium deal, and it's still... You need to go across the same bridge to get there. It's on like not quite an island, but it's far away from the rest of the cities in Florida that you would want to. So yeah, it's very strange. And it's going to cost like over $1 billion to build it, but it's maxed out at 30,000 seats, which is at least like a realistic goal for a Rays sellout is 30,000.
See, they're going to get lucky in that they're not going to hook the New York Yankees or the Boston Red Sox in that first series. I mean, because all those blue hairs would be occupying the flop at the Trop.
That's true, yeah.
I mean, seriously, with like what, 25, 30, 40% of the crowd, maybe?
More, probably,
yeah. So maybe there are blue hairs from Chesapeake Bay, Oxon Hill, Camp Springs, Bowie, Maryland. I got no idea. But I mean, if they end up hooking Baltimore, all right, so that's not super tough. Baltimore to Tampa Bay or the blue hairs who live down there. Maybe it's just blue hairs from all over the place relocating to Tampa. I mean, the home field advantage for the Rays in the postseason, is it a lack thereof? Is it like the LA Chargers in playoff games at SoFi?
I mean, you would think that, except they've made World Series runs. Yeah. And we talked about it last segment. I mean, what they do consistently is amazing because they churn through players. They never spend any money. Nobody ever knows half the guys on the team. Mm-hmm. They lose coaches and front office guys every year. And then look at them now. They're fighting Baltimore, basically tied going into the last week and a half, 2 weeks of the season, which is amazing. The good news is the Twins don't have to worry about either of those teams until a potential second or even third round, depending on how it shakes out. But I think that the Twins fans, you can focus all your attention in on the Toronto Blue Jays and then the three teams in the AL West that are still fighting it out. It's going to be one of those four. Yeah. Whoever wins the West gets the bye.
I don't see how anybody couldn't want the Rangers. I mean, Seager and Adolis Garcia and Simeon and the ballyhooed names. Yes, anybody can get hot in a short amount of time. Sure. That's what the techie teaches us. But I mean, we're now a month and change into this thing. Simeon sucks. Okay, and I know Marcus Simeon is a well-respected player, but if you read up on it, he's been in so many big spots with like guy on second, one out, where he's just not coming through. Seager's a stud. All right, Seager's the bomb. But whether it's Nathaniel Lowe or Robbie Grossman, Garver's in, Garver's out. They've been terrible at the plate for a long time now.
Yeah, although, as you said, they had a 5-game winning streak. They just swept a team that they needed to sweep. I mean, they're difficult to get a handle on. They were the best team in the American League for most of the first half. I think not having Scherzer, not having DeGrom takes a big chunk out of what they have.
Maybe it's Seattle.
I mean, I honestly don't think any of those are like matchups the Twins should be that fearful of. I think most of those lineups, especially Toronto and Seattle, are very right-handed lineups, which plays into the Twins' pitching strength. I think for the most part, and none of those teams, except for maybe Framber Valdez in Houston, have a lefty starting pitcher that is going to start a game one that you're going to be really afraid of, and he probably would start game two.
Good point.
And so the Twins would rather face righties than lefties, although that's been less of an issue in the second half too. So yeah, I mean, I think on paper, I don't know. Again, I don't think the Twins are going to be favored or anything, but because this is how it's going to be, right? If you're the 3 seed and you're playing the 6 seed, which is by definition the worst of the wild card teams, these are going to be flawed teams. These are not bad teams by any means, and some of them might have gotten hot just to get into the playoff position down the stretch, but these are not 95, 98, 100 win teams. These are the second tier of the league in a year that it's pretty wide open, and so you're going to be able to poke holes in. Well, they don't have this or they don't have that, and I just think if the Twins aren't going to do it this year, with a best of 3, all 3 games at home, you got 3 good starting pitchers lined up.
Yep.
Your lineup's been pretty good. You got rookies producing.
Adversaries ain't great.
Yes, and you can poke holes in any of the teams that you're going to be matched up against.
Yeah.
If this is not the year to, at minimum, win a playoff game, I think it's going to be very tough to sell the hope and the dreams next year if that's the case.
How about this war of attrition in the National League for the final 2 wild card spots? It's crazy. I mean, the Arizona Diamondbacks have a minus 26 runs differential. Yeah. The Reds are minus 38. The Marlins, who I think are going to get one of the two, they're minus 38. The Cubs have lost 5 in a row. They're plus 86 in the run differential. Yeah. I mean, Wrigley has a little something to do with that, probably.
It creates more runs, but The American League is a good example this year of the third wild card, I think, being very beneficial to baseball in general, which is all these teams that we just talked about, the Seattles and the Torontos and the Texases, they're playoff caliber teams. They're going to win 88, 89, 90 games, maybe more. Some of these teams, like you mentioned in the National League, that are fighting for the last spot or 2 on the wild card, I mean, these are basically, they're worse than the Twins. I mean, they're 500 teams at probably best if they were to play it out. So, I don't know. And yet, you get to the playoffs, and it's a best of 3.
Love it.
The worst of those teams against the best of a team that, the number 3 seed, which is probably going to be, Milwaukee will be the number 3 seed. What are the Brewers, 55, 60% to win that series? It's just not like other sports where a team can be such an overwhelming favorite against another playoff team.
Excellent work. Can't wait for the postseason. See you next week if you have time.
The Fan.
Final segment, 9 to noon's a quickie, and it's brought to you by Casey's. Hey, wake up in Casey's country, where pizza is breakfast. You know about the breakfast pizza, but check this out. You can stop in and get a mega slice and a medium fountain drink for just $4. Some restrictions may apply, so just go to your local Casey's, get that massive slice of pizza and that medium fountain drink, and that's your lunch. Easy enough. Casey's, here for good. Recapping 9 to noon, podcastable with the free iHeartRadio app. A bit of a rewind as we wrap up. And we're going to start 9 to noon chatting with Twins Pobo Derek Falvey. And he was asked, hey, Byron Buxton doing anything positive? What's up with Byron?
Yeah, the good news is he's running, he's moving around again, and he doesn't feel any of that soreness or pain. So now the question is building him up into the next phase of this, getting his swings a little bit more active. He can do some tee work and some light stuff now. There's a natural progression here that's led by our docs and medical folks, and we'll get into that next step. We're still remaining hopeful that there's a path here to him getting some type of live ABs against pitching, see how he's doing, build him up so that he can also be a factor among all the guys we just mentioned through the call.
Yeah, it was Derek Falvey. A lot of conversation about finding healthy bodies, constructing a playoff roster, the risks associated with evaluating guys that have had injuries down the stretch into the postseason. 7-game lead in the division for the Twins. We're looking ahead to that wild card series. Earlier in the show as well, Vikings quarterback Jaren Hall. He's a rookie, and it's all coming at him very fast at this point. But PA asked him when he joined, hey, what's eye-opening about NFL life?
And just the amount of preparation it takes to own what you're doing, especially as a quarterback. And it's such a cool thing for me to be able to see a guy like Kirk, and it's his 12th or 13th year now. Just to see the way he approaches his preparation and owning this offense, really being the leader, the commander out there. It just shows that it takes full, jumping into it and giving everything you have to be successful and to do it for that long. So that's something that in college, you have class and you got some other social things going on, but you get the NFL and it's all ball. And it's work for you, right? It's not a game anymore. You go into game time on Sundays, and that's when it kind of feels like a game. But the other days of the week, you're in the office, you're going to work, you're learning, you're practicing. So it's a lifestyle. It's no longer just a game.
That's Vikings rookie Jaren Hall jumping feet first into the community aspect as well. Really cool segment during the first hour that you can podcast. And then finally, staying with the Vikings, it was official. The team has made it official. Dalton Risner, 1 year, $4 million deal, 2.25 of it guaranteed. Here's Ben Gesslin, who covers the purple for the Strib, in studio with PA earlier, talking about Dalton Risner. Dramatic pause.
A guy that has a lot of history with his coaching staff, too, with Chris Cooper and Justin Riscotti. They both coached him in Denver, and you would think that will help speed up the acclimation to what they're doing in Minnesota, because a lot of it should be familiar. It'll be interesting to see how he fits, how quick they try to work him in. I mean, the contract they gave him would not suggest that he's just here for depth. I mean, it's $4 million with $2.25, I think, guaranteed. Mm-hmm. You don't give that kind of money to a guy you're not expecting to start.
That's Ben Gessling of the Star Tribune. Vikings can't run the ball. They've had trouble protecting Kirk. Dalton Reisner hopefully helps that. Will he start? Which position will he start? And how soon will he start? All those questions hopefully to be answered soon as well. I'm Nordo. PA's out for the day, but thank you so much to Ben Gessling, Jaron Hall, Derek Falvey, and Gleeman for joining 9 to noon. Tomorrow we are on site, Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center in Eagan. Looking forward for a show heavy on the purple, continuing the Dalton Reisner conversation as well as talkers as we get closer to that Chargers game. Go for Football Weekly, PJ Fleck. Tough loss to the Carolina Tar Heels. Next up, beat up on the Northwestern Wildcats. That's next. You're listening to The Fan.
Podcast today's Paul back to previous show and interviews by going to the iHeartRadio app or